is that his characters, because he was a consummate genius, as a playwright, his characters are so filled out that what happens to a great playwright, they speak for themselves, the characters. So he creates them, and then they go, and things happen. And he lets it happen. He encourages it, so they're free agents. That could sound like, the characters can do anything they want, and the author has no control. Well, that's not exactly what I'm saying. But things happen within the plays. These characters do things, and the author, it's all there, but I guess what it boils down to is it's an iceberg, and so much of it is submerged. In other words, the author's feelings and ideas are submerged, and they come out, the character brings them out, so he can relax. He can do personal things, personal ideas can come out of the author, which he might not be able to express to somebody in a conversation, or put down on paper and say, here's my ideas about the Jewish problem in terms of Merchant of Venice, or other problems in terms of this, or in terms of women, but he can express it through the characters. They can release his feelings. Think of it that way. And they become agents for his subconscious. And this is not just theory or philosophy. I think this can also help you in an understanding of what's happening in the plays, and where you won't get bogged down by the scholars who relate everything in terms of analysis, cold-blooded analysis. I want to go through the scene again to review it. What I'd like to do is do it in areas, not the whole thing all at once, of course, and just kind of review what's happening in the scene for that particular area, and then we'll do it, and then we'll go to the next area. It's a they're all important scenes, but this particular scene is a catalyst to so much that happens in the play. And okay, so at the opening of the scene again, the atmosphere is anticipation, urgency. They're waiting for Othello, hoping he'll come. If he doesn't come, someone else is going to have to go. They're waiting for news to find out just what the Turks are doing. They're playing games here. But they're seeing through it. All they're trying to figure out is why they're playing these games. Okay? Their idea has got to be that, yes, they are going to invade Cyprus. But maybe not today. Or maybe it'll be a ruse. Or maybe they'll send a few ships to Rhodes to start with. Maybe they'll start a battle there. And then, while that's happening, they'll send the rest of the fleet to Cyprus. And that will distract them and bring the Venetian troops to Rhodes. We don't know. So before they do anything concrete, before they say, okay, this is what we're going to do, we'll send out the general, whoever he is, to lead the troops, they're going to figure out exactly what the Turks are doing. So the atmosphere is not, it doesn't go out. It doesn't go out. There's no pontification. There's no, well, I think they're giving the speeches. They're working on the board. To hell with the audience. You're going to hear a lot of that. The board is here. They're working. There's several things we can do. It could be on the table. But I feel very strongly that there is a thing they're working with, that they're focused on and they're talking to. They're not talking to each other, per se. I mean, it's over-the-shoulder type thing. Ideas are being voiced aloud. That's what it's amounting to. Ideas are being voiced. So what happens is it's a very intricate scene. It's speculative. It's philosophical in terms of, well, what kind of games are they playing here? So we talk about analyzing. They are analyzing. And they look at the board, they look where the last ships were reported, and they're over here, and here's Cyprus over here. They started to Cyprus. No, but wait, now they're heading back to Rhodes. They're waiting for other reports. Does it make sense? So they're trying to get a picture of what's happening. And we have to get an atmosphere or an aura of intelligence here. So we get a sense of who's running this country, who's running this state, I should say. And these are mature, intelligent people, as we'll see when the scene proceeds, how they handle the problem with Desdemona, Brabantio, and whatever. Okay, so that's what we're starting with. So it's a question of taking your time at the opening part up until Brabantio comes in, and And again, they're not talking to each other in that sense, but more they're voicing ideas aloud and trying to figure things out. Highly intelligent people, this is their work. This is the kind of thing they do. They're not going to conduct the battle, but they're going to make all the arrangements prior as to where and who and what and when. Okay. Okay, hold on a second. So, well, we're looking for two here to avoid any speech making or telling the audience, which is the way it's usually done, this kind of scene in Shakespeare where, we're telling them what's happening. We're telling them rather than listening to what's happening. Okay? So what we've got here, for example, the second senator, at the end of that speech, he says, "Yet do they all confirm." In other words, first they compare notes. Within themselves, they're talking aloud, but it's all introspective. There's no composition. They're disproportionate. Mine 140, mine 200. They don't agree. And yet, in these cases, in situations like this, where things are so frantic in wartime, it's not so unusual. But then he says, "Yet they don't agree," but now he zeroes in. He gets very specific here. So we see the mind, the analytical mind, removing the fact. There's a lot of fact on the table here. There's a lot of fact. And they're going to remove it and get to the nitty-gritty. They're going to find out exactly what's happening. Now here's a different color. Very incisive. Yet do they all confirm a Turkish fleet and bearing up to Cyprus. So we see the mind working. These are not your everyday people. And I don't mean because of the high position they have. These people are responsible, extremely intelligent, perceptive. These are not average people in any way. And so they know what they're doing. These are pros. And this is their business. It's politics, because they're playing political games here on the board, the Turks, and they're not going to fool these guys. So they're not. So he zeroes in on that. Okay. So it's another color, and it should be highlighted. Yet it's not an announcement. It's not an end all. We don't know yet. All the facts aren't in, but he's seeing clarity. And whenever there's clarity within this problem, it has to come out that way. But let's go back to the okay, hang on a second. Okay, we'll do one more time. I'm zeroing in on this because this is something we need to work on in terms of all the scenes that will be coming up and whatever. So I want you to go even more with that in those two areas. Yet highlight that more. Exaggerate if you want, doesn't matter now. Yet do they all confirm. Make that more pointed so there's more of a variation there. And on the next line, when the Duke says, "Nay, it is possible enough to judgment." In other words, I do not so secure me in the error, but the main article I do approve in fearful sense. In other words, regardless of the fact that we don't know the exact numbers, it's 140, it's 180, whatever it is, we've got a problem. In other words, they're coming, they're headed there, it's dangerous, so it doesn't matter. We'd like to know exactly how many. That would be nice, we know exactly how many we need. But nevertheless, the real thing is, I do approve it, but the main article, in other words, the fact that there is an imminent invasion, I do approve in fearful sense. So that's the same thing as the senator has. In other words, the Duke is also going along with that. He's agreeing with it. So that should be incisive. So just zero in more. Make that more sharper, more clear. What we need are more colors. And we're going to need that, of course, throughout the play. Let's be aware, although I mentioned when we went through the scene yesterday, the whole scene, as we do, about underlining certain words.
For that stance that are good.
Right. And again, I don't want there to be confusion. It doesn't mean, like, for example, there was one in the first part here, but though they jump not on a just account, which is, of course, an exact account. They don't all agree, nevertheless, and then he goes on. So just, of course, is the key word. It doesn't mean, I just want this to be clear, it doesn't mean that what I'm saying, that what we're trying to arrive at there is that when the line is done by whoever happens to do it, male or female, they say, and mine 200. But though they jump down on a just account, okay, what I'm saying is it needs a color. The color could come under, the color could come on top. The color could even be an extension of the word. There are many ways to color a word. In Shakespeare, you're going to be challenged because you're going to have to find every way. In contemporary plays, it's much easier although this is often neglected, and all these things are applicable to contemporary plays that we're talking about, but just that much more. It's that much more important here, because you're dealing with a language that to start with is to a certain extent more of one people are familiar with the way these people talk today. Okay, so be aware of that. Don't lose those words. Don't let them slip by. Let them highlight the sense of what was happening there in that speech. Now the first senator, okay. And again, here's an optional, just
yeah, can go.
yeah, and I want you to be aware of it. So there are other optionals, by the way, too. I have run-ons that I had said to you as we go along the script. Here's a run-on, here's a run-on. It doesn't have to be a run-on necessarily. There are areas where I feel very strongly it should be a run-on, unless I hear it done another way where it works better for clarity and everything, fine. But then there are others, maybe half or a third of them, where they're optional. And so you should be aware of the different ways. And as I said, I know I'm repeating this one, but again, it's important. This cannot be by no essay of reason. Now, that's the run-on. And, or you can even put it together more strongly. This cannot be by no essay of reason. Okay, or this cannot be. It's more thoughtful. And yet, he knows this cannot be by no essay of reason. Now, that's interesting. He's making this, the point is the same. But it just makes it a little more interesting that way, a little more pronounced. But in any event, to be aware, it can be done either way. But the meaning has to be clear. He knows this cannot be. He's not set. What he's trying to find here is what they're actually doing. Why the game? Why the pageant? And then he says, it's a pageant to keep us in false gaze. And that would be a run-on, as we said before, because you have a break there, you lose the strength of the line.
Well, we've been missing the discovery throughout so far in reading this.
How do you mean when you say this?
Just been plowing through it as opposed to like, blah, 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 blah.
Yes, exactly.
Happening yet.
Yes, the most important thing in Shakespeare is discovery, rather than, because it can easily be read the other way, where it's all, because a lot of the speeches can either go inside, or they can go to the audience or whatever, and there's got to be discovery. Discovery is the most exciting thing, of course, or trying to figure out what the thing is so you can discover, heading toward it. Because the actual D's that you have in a script are, for one character, might be, 15, maybe 20 if you're really lucky in the whole play. That's a lot for a large character. But the thing you're talking about is working toward the discovery. Trying to find, and then how rewarded you are as an actor when you find it, when you find the answer. You've earned it. You looked at it here, you're trying to figure it out, like you said, Mark, you're looking, you're searching, trying to figure out, and you do have discoveries, smaller ones, the ones that we don't mark in the script, just clues, there's a clue, that's interesting, and it builds, and then you've seen actors, some well-known, they do it in movies all the time, they certainly do it on stage too, where they'll have a very emotional area in a play. And it can be very impressive, and it can be very real, whatever. And you're taken aback. But there's just one problem. There's nothing to indicate that in the character earlier in the play. Either by the author, perhaps, in which case it's the actor's job and the director's to find something there, otherwise why do the play? I mean, if you come into an area where you have an explosion and there's nothing, the author has not given you anything, then either get the damn author to rewrite the damn thing, really, or if you're going to deal with it, you've got to find an answer. You've got to put things in earlier, in the course of the play or the movie or whatever, to indicate these things. And then when that comes, there's a logic to it. There's a kind of logic. Okay, and this is what we're talking about here. There's things happen. We see certain things happen, and then discovery, and it makes them so, yes, I see now what happened there and there and there, and it all equals this. Okay. So in this speech we have a lot. And again, he says things, the senator, that concrete, but they're still in the building period. It's a pageant to keep us in false gaze. Okay. So he knows they're playing the game, but to what end? what are they ultimately after? You still don't know. Maybe the aim is they are going to go to Rhodes. But no, they're not going to go to Rhodes. It says they're not. So why are they doing this? Why? And when are they going to make their move? Their actual move? So, okay. So we have the break after to keep us in false gaze. And then he gives the reasons why he believes that it's a pact. So that's incisive and that's very definite. It has another tone than the earlier part. But it's not to the others. It can easily be to the others. It's been done that way. So you have one of the senators, he's talking to the Duke and the other senators. Usually have a bunch of men on, not just three, they'll have like 6 or 8. And he tells them, he says to them, when he gets to the parenthesis part, when we consider the importance of Cyprus and let ourselves again but understand that is it. Why is he telling them? They know that. So he's reaffirming what he knows and what they know. Okay, he's seeing through it. And then it ends with that Rhodes is resting. If we make thought of this, he puts the whole thing together. Now, everything I just said, and this has to have a highlighted color because he's wrapping it all up now. If we make thought of this, and then we must not think the Turk. And now we have a longer line. You'll notice usually the summation lines are longer because we put the whole thing together. We must not think the Turk is so unskillful to leave that latest, which concerns him first. And then he highlights that. He tops that. Neglecting, there's a slight break, neglecting an attempt of ease and gain to wage and wage a danger of profits. So let's go back. Good. And if you want to move around, by the way, anything, that's fine.
It's almost like some of these colors have to be physical. I mean, for me. I don't know how to vocally make them without physically.
Fine. Oh, please, go with it. Even if we weren't to do that in the play, let's say for some reason we find we wouldn't have him move. He's absolutely, and he may move, but I don't mean to imply that he won't. And that'd be very interesting. Instead of having them all sitting at the table, that's okay with some. But the human beings, they're trying to, and they're comfortable within themselves. These guys work together. Tomorrow night they'll play cards. Hopefully, if things are going better. Today it's not cards, it's business. And it's not night, it's AM. So, okay, they're doing that, but they're comfortable with each other. They respect each other. That's why Brabantio isn't here. Not to get into the whole thing on Brabantio, but why isn't he here? Not because he's a dunce or an idiot. They don't need him. Yeah. He's an important voice in terms of his vote, but they don't need him. And whatever they have to do, they can do it without him, literally and figuratively. In other words, when they make the vote as to, or when they make the decision as to just what they're going to do, they don't need him to approve it. But the guys who are here, obviously, aside are guys who know war, who are the right people. Otherwise, they would have called Brabantio. There's nothing to stop them from calling him.
I have a question in it.
Sure.
The way that I read it, it ended in a question. And I just felt like...
It ends in you need to wait and wait. In other words, it could come out as a question in one way, and you could compound the idea that we want. To leave that here, neglecting an attempt we make thought of this. We must not think the Turk is so unskillful to leave that latest which concerns him first. Neglecting an attempt of ease and gain to wage a danger of profits. And so you get into a question.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to go with that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's very good. And then when you discover that, like you did now, when you would go back to it, you can go with it even more.
Yeah.
Make it more of a question. And because it makes it that much stronger it makes it much stronger as a point by ending with a question. Absolutely. Let's go to, the next line of hers is cut. We said that, so that's clear. It comes about it more. It'll go right into his appearance. Now, after he comes in, the messenger, now we've got the final thing we need to know. So even the messenger who comes in has to be aware, to a great extent, if not totally, of the consequences of what he's bringing in. Because he doesn't have to be brilliant, the messenger, to understand that there are two groups here, two fleets that have split up. And now, he says, steering with due course of that, have there enjoined to them with an after fleet. Now, in other words, now they've all gotten together and they're And then he says, he continues, he tells them how many, they re-do stem their, and this is there, and now they do re-stem their backward course, bearing with frank appearance. So in other words, he's not just coming in with news that they'll speculate on, he's coming in with the final news. In other words, frank appearance is the key there. I don't even have to be underlined, right? I'm just saying that's the key to the whole thing, that he knows, and now we're going to know what they're doing. There's no more. There's no more gloss. There's no more games here.
So this could be a discovery for the percentager, the final discovery from all
a confirmation.
A confirmation.
A confirmation.
Yeah.
Very important to say confirmation, because he says the first thing he says in his early news is, I thought. Aha. It's just the way I thought. And then how many is it? Yes, that's very important. Okay, he says. And then so now we're dealing with facts. Now we know. The scene is now taking a change. It's no longer speculative. Now we're ready to go. Now it's just a matter of who's going to go. Who's going to lead them? We want it to be Othello. If not, then it would have to be someone else.
What is witness free duty? What's that mean?
You are trusted with his free
duty recommends.
With his free duty recommends you thus. With his job, with his obligations to you. In other words, his responsibility to you recommends you thus. Is that clear? Yeah. And pray you to believe him. That's Montano, of course, who's going to be replaced. Montano is worried. He's concerned. I mean, he doesn't say that, Montano. He doesn't say, for God's sake. You know, if we could ask here, what is the subtext of Montano in terms of what's going on with him now? There's a reason I bring this in, and I think perhaps it is, dear God, we've got 150 troops on the island. The Turks are headed here with maybe 200 ships and thousands of troops. Please, dear God, do send the damn men as soon as possible, or I'm going to get my ass taken off. You see, in other words, you see what I'm driving at. He's in trouble.
He wants them to find Othello? Is that what you're saying?
Excuse me?
He wants them to find Othello?
Not that, no. What he wants is, well, that's okay. He'd like to have Othello or someone like it, because he realizes this is not a job for him. So he's in over his head. But the main thing he wants is reinforcements. You know, so in a nicer way as possible, without sounding like a coward or a man, everybody say, please believe me, take my word for it, we are in big trouble. Send them as soon as possible. But it's written in the form of, appearance or whatever. Trusty and most valued servitor with his free duty, whatever, is all the signs of respect that is within that. It's important too. I don't want to lose anything. Because even there we see how the kind of culture that we're in, everything, even amidst invasion and amidst being outnumbered and amidst rape and pillage, there is always that decorum. Your trusty and most valued servitor with his free duty. With all of this, there is that flurry of lines. And that's exactly the culture we're dealing with in Venice. Very proper, very respectful. And you'll see it all the time. You'll see it with Cassio when they land at Cyprus. It's the way they are. It's inveterate. It's not okay. So and we'll go on to the next area. But just to note again, in terms, I'm a bug about small parts in any of the Shakespeare plays, in any place, and whenever I'll have Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and what's the difference between the two? And we don't know. There is a difference. They're two different human beings, and you'd be amazed what you can do with those two characters in terms of how they're different and how important they are, etc., etc. Well, here we have a messenger, and he may be doing other things in the play, but for now he's doing this particular role. It certainly is a small part. Very important, though, not just for him in terms of what he does, but in terms of the waves that he creates in terms of the other characters. So when he comes in and he says, he too has a response to this. We have to ask him, what is his response? That he knows. He's got the final news. That's important. He feels important. He feels inflated here. And he's happy to tell them. Because he hates the Turks. They all hate the Turks. Those are the enemies. So he comes in with that attitude. And that backward, with frank appearance, that purposes towards Cyprus. He's excited about this. Now, so it not only fills out his character, but it fills out what what's happening with the Duke and the others on stage. It's electrifying. And we have to keep it within certain restraints, don't misunderstand. But for now, we can go with it even more, so you'll get the idea. Okay?
Well, the information is just, this is very important information.
Yes.
You don't need to belabor this point as the messenger, though. I mean, the information you're laying out is so important, it essentially speaks for itself.
But I want it to be important to him.
It is.
Okay,
I understand, yeah.
In other words, I want it to be personal to him. And even, don't worry about the overdoing it, because you can always overdo it. We can tone it down. You know what I mean? So don't worry about that now. But I want him to take a special pride in it. Something just a little, you know what I mean? Not just another everyday thing. How often does he get to do this? You know, he gives messengers, but this is a big one. When was the last time the Turks invaded? It's been a number of years. They're always a constant threat, but they never have made a move in a while. It's been maybe 10 years since they've had any problem with that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just trying to highlight it more. That's all. And it's not a play about a messenger. No. Okay. Let's go to the top of page 16. Okay. Now we'll go into the. That's good. That went better. It's just by bringing that extra area you had in it, it made a hell of a difference. The way I work, if you don't already know, as a director, some directors will like to start here and they build up. I like to start here, in terms of background. Oh, fill in things that happen. But when you're working on things like this, to go with it, to feel free. Whatever you want to do, you do to try to fill it out, you know. And but I also respect starting at a lower level. It depends on the actors. So for now, we're working tight and we want to get as much in as short a time as possible. So I'm going to be highlighting earlier than I might normally. Just one last thing. There's one line after he is through. And the Duke says, "'Tis certain then for Cyprus," key line, because now the scene it's over that part. Now we're starting to a whole new area. So now it's not how many men are we going to send, when are we going to send them, etc., what kind of game are they playing? That's all resolved. Now it's on to the next step, which is to do it. We got to get either Othello or Marcus Luchikos or whoever it's going to be, and we got to go, and we got to get there. It's going to take a couple of weeks to get there, so we got to get the boats out now. Okay, so that has to be isolated. 'Tis certain then for Cyprus. Okay, now there's a moment, and now we got to next whole new thing. And mix that comes in Othello. Now, that's the quality, that's the attitude. He's going to come into this summer day. Yeah, he walks in, and there they are, they're ready to go. And so what is that going to do to the Duke? My God, valiant Othello. So he goes to him, you see, and he goes to him, but when he sees him, and it's like, my dream, this is perfect timing. He wants to kiss him. And so he sees him, if he's not moving now, he certainly will now come out of his chair, and he'll go to him with due respect, and valiant Othello. And then what happens there is, he says, the way it's in the line, it's all together. There's a comma, because there'll always be a comma after a name, but that doesn't mean anything. Valiant Othello, we must straight employ you against the general enemy. Well, okay, that's something. But now, we've got to see how he feels about what's happening. We've got to see how he feels about Othello. We've got to discover all that in a couple of, not lines, a couple of words. But it can be done. And we got to feel how he feels in terms of the moment, what's happening. So all that in those couple of words and the beginning of the next line. So comes in, so it's like a note of music that continues after Othello and goes into we. Okay? It's like valiant Othello. You're happy. And then, but he doesn't stop talking. He just stops verbalizing. But inwardly, he's still talking. And then he says, as he's still talking, he's still smiling, he's still so delighted to see him, he tells him, we must straight employ you. So you've got in the relationship, how he feels about him, how he feels now that he's here, and otherwise it's cut and dry and curt and rude and cold, and it means nothing but facts. You're here, and you have to straight employ you, and relationships. So again, it's personal. Okay, so if he's that involved with him, it could justify him not getting involved with Brabantio. I just cannot buy that they all come in together and doesn't see Brabantio. And if he does see him, or the audience sees him seeing him, and then he says, I didn't see you, that's really rude. I mean, that's polite. He'd never do that to you. So we just take the damn line out. We're not worried about it, you know. He's still avoiding him by not responding to him first, but this is too important. He's focused on him. And then he goes to, Brabantio with the proper decorum, but it doesn't lose what's happening. It's just like it has its own smaller importance. Okay, so let's go to a quick note about the something that you will find eventually is going to work for you and make things easier. Now it may seem a little... The thing I mentioned about syllables on certain words within 10-syllable lines, like against the general enemy Ottoman. Now, if you read it that way now, if you say against the general enemy Ottoman, it sounds strange. Normally you would say against the general, 3 syllables, enemy, 3 syllables, Ottoman, which is fine. However, what I'm driving at is this, that in this scene, when it's done right, in terms of timing, in terms of what's happening emotionally, you're not going to say, we must straight employ you against the general enemy Ottoman. You see, you will find the music is all wrong, and the author knows what he's about here, obviously, and it's rushed. I don't mean rushed where he's not clear, but there's an emotional equivalent here.
Did it sound like I said general?
No, I just want you to be aware of it, because I know there's been a little confusion about it.
Yeah. It was hard because all of a sudden Ottoman. I said, I was about to say general enemy Ottoman.
Yeah, that you can't do. No,
but I
that's no.
That's what I started to do, then I went Ottoman.
No, just Ottoman. So that's no problem. I mean, there are words you cannot do that with. They're just not short enough unless you're illiterate. And that's a whole other thing. But you're not by saying general enemy Ottoman. It's the way people talk.
General enemy.
Yeah, but I just want you to be aware of it, that's all. And if it comes out now the right way, in other words, where you extend it, don't worry about it. But just be aware that when you're working in rehearsal and performance, that's what you're going to want that. You're going to see, you're not going to want to be labored by the extra syllables. They're going to slow down. It wouldn't make any sense. And it sounds much better to everyone concerned, but it also emotionally will work better. Another one like that is, nor doth the general care. Nor doth the general care take hold on me. He's clipped. Everything is clipped where it can be clipped.
Where's that?
On 56. Yeah. Nearby. I've marked most of them as not, that would be... The term they use for that is allegiance, which he does in his...
So you're saying that general would be general care?
Would be general care. There are lines, and you'll see lines in the script where it will say, I have not that much time to spend with you. I have not that much time to spend with you. You'd never say in an urgent area where you're desperately trying to get rid of someone, I have not that much time to spend with you. You see, you put the words you type. This is what we do in regular speech.
Right.
And the fact that it's written that way in here does not mean it's not what the author wants. It's also a question of where they got this from, which quarto, which folio, and on and on and on. So that's not our concern. Our concern is what we know to be best here, and that's what he would want. That's what works. And we're not changing the play in any way by doing this. We're making it better. But we're realizing. Because the Duke, as I said, has to be taken aback by the news that Brabantio brings him. At first he's concerned because he doesn't know what's wrong. Something's very wrong. And they're very close. They're very good friends. They're relatives, etc., etc. So and then of course when he actually tells him what it is, that is a capital crime. And so he's all ears. Even though he'd rather get on with the other than anywhere. That's always paramount. But nevertheless, this is very important. And he respects Dukes. 2, 3, 4, 5. The first whole speech that he has, after he tells him what it is, where he beat it in this Gulf City, they're all run-ons. Everything there is tied together. So you get an idea of what's happening there with him. It's very authoritative, very definite. There is a break within the line, and you have heard there's a break there, and then he says, the result will be, whoever he is, when we find him, this is what will happen. A bloody book of law you shall yourself read in the bigger letter after your own sense or after its own sense, whichever we do. Yea, and then he highlights that. There's a slight break there, and he highlights it with yea, though our proper sons should in action. That's very important. And this, if it's that strong at the end there, it's total. End of conversation. He couldn't say any more than that. You will pass judgment in effect, or you will give the sentence. And the next thing he finds out is it's Othello. So you see, again, we've created a very exciting, dramatic thing here, because he's committed himself, and all of a sudden, clump. Now where does all that go? All that, you can do this, and you can do that. Oh, well, thank you very much. Wonderful. Here's the man.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Now what do I do? You see. So it'll be a great moment for the Duke. And we should see that, and it'll play out, the awkwardness that he had. Oh, he'll cover it because he's a politician, he knows how, but we're going to see, and it's almost funny in a way. It's almost funny. In fact, it could get a laugh. I'm not saying we're looking, or we should, but it could from an audience. Oh, really? They know what Othello is. We've heard Iago talk about it, and now we see what's happening. So it'll be a very intelligent response. But you see what I'm driving at. Okay, so go with that. The Duke is, and Brabantio continues, humbly, I thank you, Grace. Oh, he's elated, wonderful. He's going to help me. I knew he would, but he's distracted, but he's going to do it now, and this is what, and then he makes the announcement. So, here is the man, this more, whom now it seems to. And don't lose it on the last line Brabantio has. Don't let that be a deflating line, because it could. It could read like, he's guilty, but now it seems your special mandate is going to send him to the islands, and what does that leave me with? No. It could be like, he shouldn't be going, he shouldn't be leading them, with that attitude. So it's negative. It's negative against him, it's not against him, against Brabantio's case. So we won't lose that build. And then there's the pause. And one of the senators, the other senator, the first senator, he can say whoever is sorry for it. And then the other pause, and then finally the Duke's like. We'll need those pauses just to give them a chance to adjust to this. What the hell is going on? No one knew about this, about him romancing her or anything. How could they? It's a bunch of it, Okay, let's go back to the greeting. Okay, so, and one thing again that will help us here, not to lose the build, is to even make it stronger with Brabantio in his last speech. Because it tends to read where it would come down a bit. We've got to overcome that. Yeah. It's kind of an anticlimax. And if that's the case, then the discovery will be... So you can justify that easily enough by the fact that he's elated of the response. That the Duke is so... he expected him to respond positively, but maybe not that positively and not so quickly. Because he knew when he came here that other problems, the thing about the Turks, he knows about the Turks, but I'm sure that there's a problem with that. There's going to be an invasion, and but he doesn't know that they're meeting tonight. And so this is news to him. So when he finds out, it's embarrassing and awkward. And he says at the beginning, when he comes in, he does have to apologize and say, I apologize. This is state business, and it's very important. I realize the consequences of it. I can't help it. What I'm going through is so traumatic, and I think, and I hope you will understand. Well, lo and behold, not only he understands, but he's ready to do it right now. We'll have a special session, we'll pass judgment, you will pass. So let him have more of a response to that. Humbly, so it ties it all in together, it's quicker, it's easier, and we can go right to it instead of a search party or whatever. So really enjoy that. And then here is the man, Ishmael, whom now it seems could come out like that he's not going to Cyprus. How is he going to leave, or wherever they're going to go? He's not going to leave them. Whom now it seems a special mandate. There's almost an age there of disapproval that he would even have been considered to go when you consider what he's capable of. And then comes the change. So let's just go back to, and also the Duke can help there too, in the sense that he can take it more personally. He has a daughter, remember. He says that later. They probably all have daughters, not so unusual, In any event, he does. And how would he feel about it? And this is a relative, a friend, a man who has great respect. He's not just another senator. He has extra votes. It's according to Iago, as many as the Duke, so we'll say he has a high position. And so let that be personal. Okay, how dare whoever this person is do that. And then, there's a line before that. Don't lose that. We are very sorry. That's, the senator. Well, one of the senators can have that line, yeah. That's the first pause we have. And then there's the Duke. It gives the Duke more time to try to get himself together here and have a response to what's going on. That was good. That was good. And Brabantio won't lose anything on any of that last speech.
I have a question.
Sure.
So once I've identified Moore, how do I deal with it seems your special mandate?
Yeah, it kind of is a deflating line. Yeah, it sounds like a line against himself. It's like, for now, it's almost like, I think what the problem is like he's saying, here's the guy responsible, but unfortunately he's also the guy that we need to lead the troops.
Right.
So what you have to do with that is turn it around and say he shouldn't be leading the troops. In other words, instead of humbly I thank your grace, here is the man, this more, who now it seems your special mandate for the state affairs I think about. It's a defeating line. Rather than that, humbly I thank your grace. And then you have to say, here is the man, this more, who now it seems your special mandate for the state affairs has hit the board. I'm just giving you an idea. It could end as a question instead of say him, and you got to be careful not to antagonize them by saying, how could you be so stupid as to assign him? It's something an actor has to play with. And after a couple of rehearsals, you'll have it down just right. It's not a line you're going to lie, but you have to know what you need there.
You nailed it, though, two times ago, really well. I mean, there was some real, it was really bitterness coming out of you.
Sure.
Yeah, a couple times you just nailed it.
You got to be aware of it, though, because if you have it right and you don't know why, you'll never get it again. Or you may get, you know what I'm saying? So it can't just be a feeling. It's got to be a whole bunch of it. You've got to have it.
I was kind of insulted. I mean, it was kind of insulting to me to hear that.
And that's what we want. It's only one line. The senator, whoever he is, they won't all say we are very sorry for it. Again, you have those things in the play, and oh Lord, it's.
Those are other buggers.
It's like that classic line in Macbeth. It's classic, it sounds funny when I say it, but let me tell you, it's not funny, and you go to a production of it, you'll hear it every time. It's the line where, it's only one of many, unfortunately, but it's classic. It's the line where Malcolm finds out that his father is dead. They all rush out in their robes and whatever to the courtyard, and oh my God, the bells are ringing, and Macduff is the one who awakens them because he just found out that the king's dead. He just went into the room, bloody, horrible, screaming, yelling, people running around. He comes in, Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Banquo, etc., and there's Malcolm. Now he has to be told, well, what's going on? What's happening? My God, chaos, etc., etc. And we all know what's happened, of course. And he looks at Malcolm, and he says to Malcolm, your father is dead. Oh? It's infuriating. What stops the actor or the director from telling the actor that you have two responses there? First before all and one after all. The fact that in the script, here's the way it reads, oh, comma, by whom? Do I give a damn how they grammaticize it or whatever? That's our prerogative, not the authors, it's not anyone else's. It's us to work out in the play when we're rehearsing, okay? And I'm a bug about that. That's why I will take Shakespeare's lines, I will honor them 100%, but my obligation is to bring out what I believe he's writing about. And that's our job in theater. That's what we're here for as actors and directors. Think? Otherwise, all we're here is to say these words. So we have to find the rhythms. We have to put commas or question marks or gaps or pauses or beats where they don't appear to be in the script to highlight what we need. And here's an easy example. He has a look after he's told, and he loves his father. You gotta remember, it's a good relationship. And he's beaten down. And then he says, oh, the O is heartbreak. It's horror. And then there's a pause, and no one's going to cut in or interrupt him. How could they? They have to honor they have to respect the son's response to his father's death. So no one would be inclined to say, well, wait a minute, I feel like Banquo would say something. No, he wouldn't. Neither would anyone. So everyone's looking at him, including, I hope, the audience. And after the O, and he's beaten down, and there's that pause. It's a pause in terms of time, and not in terms of what's happening. And then there's a change, and he looks up, and now comes someone did. Who did? I. You see what I'm driving? And you got a whole story there. You got a
Or it could just literally be by who, and it's so pathetic.
It
can. Well, no, I'm just the options you have as a to interpret this. It can literally, it can just be. It's like
you mean still beaten down after the pause? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, where it can
possible.
That
Possible. Yeah.
The options.
Possible. Yeah. As long as it's weighted on him, and there's that pause before, and then there's the pause after, and then finally the last line. So you got a whole thing, you have a whole scene there. And as a matter of fact, the best thing in that last production I saw on Broadway was Malcolm. He was badly directed. He was given, but the actor was quite good. And so he inspired everything. He was the best thing in the show. Malcolm's a good role. Malcolm is the one who's about the third lead in the show, actually. Or the fourth, maybe, but come on. It's ridiculous. Well, what's going on here? This should not happen. We mustn't let these things happen. I saw a production of Lear in London at the National. That's a national theater. Never mind who did it. This was 7 years ago. And the best thing in the production, maybe this was major names. If I told you who was doing the roles in this, including the lead, of course, this is a major star in film, a major star. The best thing, the person who stole the show was Reagan. Now, Reagan is the other doorman, the villain. So it's interesting because Goneril, it's the more colorful, it would appear, of the roles, although Reagan's a great role. It's different than Goneril. Not going to get into Lear now, but I'm just saying how it was done right with Reagan. The colors did it, things that the rest of the cast, they could have phoned it in. And that's the best I can say. That's the best I can say. And she walked off with the show. Now it's horrible for this to happen. It's horrible. We mustn't let this happen. And such an honor to do a show like Lear. You think that everyone would be there. No one should steal the show. What should be stolen? The show should steal the show. And the only way that happens is we're all working together. And the National Theatre. So it happens in England too. You'd be surprised. It's not that much different. Yeah, so let's have a lot, the awkwardness there. There's a lot of subtext before that. We're very sorry for, they may exchange a quick look or something, and then what to do. They're all like, no. And as far as Duke is concerned, we have got to sense in the way not in what he says, but the way he voices it, where he's coming from. I don't mean that he goes to him and he says, oh, come on, what in your own pocket to say to this, like Monty Python or something. I don't, Well, what I'm saying is that it's got to be clear, subtle but clear, that he's encouraging him, that he wants an answer that will make things nice, okay? And that has to be the quality throughout, that they're trying to, to help him or something, without insulting Brabantio. So the Duke has a great scene here, and so does the senator. Look what you have to play with. You want this guy to come up with a good answer, you want to help him, but at the same time you have to respect Brabantio. And then, on the other hand, the main overriding is you want to tell him to go to Cyprus and get this damn thing resolved as quickly as possible. So the Duke has got a lot of things going. This whole scene isn't just Othello. It's other people about human beings. See, that's the thing. We all have a vested interest in life. I don't care who's center stage at any moment. That person may be center stage, but what does it mean to us? Or why, you know what I'm saying? And so the Duke in his life is center stage now. His whole job is on the line in terms of his country, his city. So we've got to see that here. And Othello, of course, we know him, and Brabantio, and the senators. Everybody has his own tremendous vested interest. So what you've got here is, from the audience's point of view, it's like they're sitting out there, and he had hit the ball. And that's what, you see what I'm driving at. It's like, so everybody's like, they should all feel, the audience, like, no. They should, you know what I mean? And you can't hear a pin drop. And then finally he says, we are very self-foot and not very strong. And then there's another pause, and now they're still waiting. In other words, we're waiting for what's going to happen. We should feel the waiting. And then he finally says to Duke, what in your own part? And then now the timing changes. What in your own part can you say to this? Brabantio does not want this kind of timing. This works against, it militates against what he's trying to do. Because it's too important. I mean, it is important, but in a wrong kind of way. So he's the one that breaks it. When after the Duke's line, what in your own part can you say to this? Nothing. He comes right in. Nothing but this is so. Boom, that's ended. There's nothing to discuss. And then Othello comes. We've got that rhythm with Brabantio. Boom, boom, boom. He did it. Something terrible has happened. Then we have the Duke and all those run-ons. Okay, where he be, etc. It's going to be done, wherever it is, and he'll get capital punishment. And then Brabantio, I thank your grace, etc. And this more, etc. And then we have, of course, the pause. Then we have groping, awkwardness. And then the Duke, and again another pause. And then Brabantio coming in rudely and peremptorily, like, that's it, end the conversation. Now, we have a whole different color. And this will be a great setup for, I hate to use that word, it sounds so calculating, I don't mean it that way, but for Othello. Because now we have something new. Amidst the accusation, amidst the Duke's call for justice, how it's going to be, amidst the fumbling after the pauses, comes the voice of reason, comes the voice of maturity, of equanimity, of confidence. And it's almost like if Othello, the actor, is there taking all this in, what happened before, it's like he knows what to do. Because he's seeing what they're doing. And the total contrast, you see what I'm driving at, and it's going to set him off like an angel, but as a strong angel. It's almost like he'll do none of what they're doing. Not the fumbling, not the awkwardness, not the anger, none of that. And then what's left? But dignity. And, And so and that voice is going to sound so good to an audience now. It really is, in terms of the health of it. And, okay, so let's now go to what in your own part. Oh, and just a note in regard to that. So he addresses them, very nicely, not to sequies and nothing like that. He's never had that. But with respect, there is a ritual that we do here. He does it well. That I obtain away this old man's daughter, there's a run on that, it is most true. That's one thing. There's a break. Also true is the fact that I've married her. I want to be clear about that it doesn't, because it all could be one thing. I've taken her away and married her. I have taken her away, yes. I have married her, yes. That would be nice to isolate those two. And then there's a break, and of course, he says, which is the most important line to David, that's it. This is going to be his case. That's the crime I've committed. That's it, no more. So he's denying guilt. He's denying culpability here. Very important. And then, now there's another break. And obviously, he has decided, when he starts this thing here, that he is going to tell them what he does, in fact, tell them a page later in that whole long speech that's coming up. So this whole thing here, from rude I am to in speaking for myself, is a prelude to his saying that I am going to tell you. He knows he's going to tell him in this whole prelude. He's just saying, in effect, look, I want you to understand something. I don't speak that well. Awkward. This is not my element. But in any event, I'll do the best I can. So it's not, you see what I'm saying? And then in the last part of it, yet by your gracious patience I will, he on that line is asking their permission. You see, it's all according to formality. There's a ritual here. It's the way it is. He has to do this. He has no choice. Anything else would be rude beyond means. He wouldn't be a general in their army if he wouldn't, There's nothing wrong with being polite and respecting the decorum. That's what he's doing. It's all fine. There's nothing wrong. And then Brabantio interrupts, or he cuts in before they have a chance to respond, and their response obviously would be, yes, let us hear your story. He comes in with his, don't take anything for granted there, yet by your gracious patience, he's asking them if he can, if he will be allowed. He's not saying to them, I'm going to, I will if you will allow me. So that would be very nice, very gentle, and very, and better that he doesn't in any way, let's go with it. I don't think there'll be a problem. Okay, so let's go to the Duke slide. What are you on? Okay, just a note here. So after that speech, I think it's clear that he has scored some points here, just in his presentation alone. So Rabancho has to respond to that. This is not a good stop, okay? He handled that well. So he's got to counter. There's got to be a riposte here. And that certainly will motivate Rabancho to use the main argument that there was no indication of this. On the contrary, here was a woman who was so shy and reticent and whatever. And so you've got to override what he just did. But it's got to be a given. It's so obvious. It's ludicrous. And also something else that you can use. Rather than, you could approach it, possibly, where all this is true, which we know it is from other things that we'll find out and say about her, about Desdemona, and that you're telling them something that they don't know about. I'm talking about the Duke and the others. I find it very hard to believe that the Duke and the senators don't know Desdemona. I don't intimately, but this is family here. Certainly they've seen her grow up over the last 20 years or so, and they must know, they must have a feeling about her. Not necessarily in depth, but they must have, like if someone said to one of them, well, what kind of a woman is she? They must have, well, she's shy, she's this, she's that, right? They've come to his house to visit how many times? And they've seen the same thing he saw, Othello. So what I'm writing, if that's the case, he's not talking so much to him, he's talking to the others. He's presenting it to people who already know this. So it's like, so it's going to affect the lines. Now you have to ask yourself, how is it going to affect them? What's it going to do? But just be aware of that. He's talking to people who know this already. He doesn't have to prove anything. Okay, so let's go to his response. Rabancho, that's better. Ask yourself what the subtext will be there. Create some. What I'm saying, so that if you're looking at them, and there'll be times you look at him too, that you're going to whatever, the Duke, the senators, that like for example, you know her, right? Desdemona, my daughter, how many years, right? It's that kind of thing. You're not going to have time to get all this subtext in, but you can take the time when you're working on it, alone or whatever. You see what I mean? And then you can tighten it up until pretty soon you don't even need seconds to do it in. But it'll be there. It'll be a quality. That's art where we just epitomize it. But first you have to do it in a longer way, and then you narrow it down. So I'm talking about the longer way now. So if we were rehearsing this now, that's what I would have you do. We would take a long time. I'd tell you, look, do it. Go and say it if you want, or say it to yourself. I don't care. But you may spend more time on the dialogue that isn't in the play, you will, than on the dialogue that is. That's the way to rehearse these plays, believe me. And then, so you've got to write another play, a whole other play that is analogous to this. And the two plays are concomitant. They're together all the time throughout. And then when you go on stage, you bring on that other play. Otherwise, what are you bringing on with these words? So here's an area where you're going to have a lot of that. It's a given, axiomatic. I mean, come on, you know her. It's like a guy presenting his case to the court. There's the jury, there's the guy who's accused, and there's the guy doing the accusing right here, me, Rabancho. You see, approach it that way, so that they're in the jury box. But this jury are people that you know. It's a loaded jury. You know them. They're all relatives. They all know him, and they know your daughter. And that's how you're talking to them. So be aware of that, of the subtext. Now, with all of that, the Duke comes in with the vouch, this is no proof. So the more that Rabancho has of that, the more of a jar. This is what he comes in with, just the opposite. Because the vouch, this is no proof. This is not the way to conduct the case. He's being very right here. And there is an edge here. And there is a turning point. Something is happening. That's why I say I marked this the other day as a major area. Because we see now, we're getting, for the first time, we're finding out, or Rabancho is certainly finding out, where they're coming from. And now it's not. In other words, he's not going to be evicted on your word. He's going to be evicted on proof. And we've got to get a sense, going beyond that there's doubt here among them. Definite doubt that, in fact. Okay, we will continue here. Just a note, mentioned it the other day, just to reaffirm, very important, because so he has a response. He makes his mind up to bring her into this in Brabantio's speech. So there's a change here in Othello. And he's not steel-like as he was earlier. There's, he's human. And it'll be very nice. It'll just make him that much more appealing here. This is his most appealing area in the whole play. It's not just this moment, but the whole scene. Yeah, he's got to really reverberate here because we really get to know him here. And we see the best parts of him. And it's not a ploy, it's real. So he I don't mean he's weakened here, but he's jarred by what Brabantio said in terms of the lack of confidence he has in this relationship. He still does not believe that she said yes. He still doesn't believe he's married. In spite of all that seems to be going on and his, he's got everything under control.
So as a character choice, I don't want to show too much of that either. But
no, yeah. But, no, absolutely right.
I mean, especially in that section, Send for the Lady, I don't want them to know that I'm really shaking in my...
Okay, that's fine, as an end result, absolutely. Right. But now, remember, we're exercising.
Yes.
So don't be afraid. If you want to, in other words, I won't object at all. On the contrary, if now it's like he's really jarred and internally he's not able to cover it that well. And then you can bring on the cover in the rehearsals that we don't have now.
See, I haven't found that other one yet. I haven't found where to pull that out of.
The jarring?
Yeah. I know it's there.
It's in his whole speech.
I know it's
there. Oh, you mean in you or in okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then that will come to a rehearsal because you're going to work on the guy where he's coming from. He's never had background with women, with prostitutes in the field, yes. Certainly he would have, but not with anything else. And that's a story in itself, which is interesting, because they would serve him. And he being the kind of guy he is would not take advantage of that. He's a gentleman, he's respectful of women in that way. But they would serve him, and he would assume that that's something he has coming to him. That's his relationship with women up to now. You can't fault him on it in a sense. I mean, he's in the field, he's never at home. I know. But now he comes up against a social relationship with a woman that is, is quite different. And he's unable to deal with it. What you have to do is go back to the courting and to her and what she's capable of. The music, the books, the painting, the dancing, the ability to be such a charming person with others in terms of personality. He is none of those things. He can be charming, but he certainly has the other abilities are just not there. He doesn't know any of that. How does he feel about that? What is his response? His inadequacy, his incompetency, and his insecurity in this relationship. But also his attraction to her. The fact that he finds her, because of her response to him. So, that's something those are things to work on over, a week or two, and then keep on working on it as you're doing the role. Okay, so in the first part, those first few lines, he loved me, he invited me, and he continually, because he says still could be a substitute word to use for a while to get used to it, because still is not, the connotation is not what we're thinking of. But anyway, so he loved me, he invited me, and he continually questioned me, the story of my life. That's the rhythm that you've got there. So each one is isolated and each one builds on the other. And it's a good start. The beginning of the speech is so important because it is a long speech and it's complex, a lot of things in it. And it must start on the right note. So the story of my life from year to year. And then he particularized the battle, sieges, fortunes that I have passed. Now, want to avoid, and we've really got it here in this speech, is the thing that I always work on in the Shakespeare plays, and that is a lot of reporting. There's a lot here. There's a lot of exposition here. And we must always find ways to take the exposition and make it live. That's the key. It's the key in contemporary theater, but it's not nearly the problem because you don't have much in contemporary theater. When do you have speeches like this? I don't mean just the beauty of them. I mean long speeches in theater. And certainly not the metaphor of St. Jude's theater. That's the beauty of it. So, it's to get beyond that, we've got to find things to personalize it. So that it doesn't become just facts. Because he did tell him all this. He told, and she heard it too, of course. It needs a flavor. And one thing can help is remembering when you told this. Because the story is known. I mean, it's in you. It happened, most of these things. He tells about all of them, whatever. May have colored them some, as all people do to a certain extent. But they did happen. So it's got to be more personalized. So what can happen is that as you're telling it early on, you go back to time and place. You see what I mean? Where it happened. What I want to do ultimately is, as much as possible, remove you from this room. If that doesn't sound strange. So that he gets so caught up in this. It grows. It doesn't happen all at once. He gets so caught up that by the time he's on to the last part of the speech, which is that key area, when her response to it, he's gone. He's left us. And so we're not confronted with this guy, Othello or Iago, whoever it is, and we have to listen to this whole story. And it goes on and on. I know it's very beautiful. I know the writing is wonderful and everything else. And that's fine. But what are we here for? And what can be more exciting to an audience than rather than be confronted with it, to have to be drawn to it? And the way to draw them is, I've been telling actors this for years, which has got to be clear, is to get so lost in it that you're not telling them anything, you're simply living it. And then it's like they got to bend an ear. They have to find out what's going on here. Something is happening with this guy. And all we have to do is hear, because he's enunciating. I hear what he's saying. But something is happening, and he doesn't need us, if that doesn't sound too. I say to hell with the audience. Some directors work another way. I don't. I work away from an audience. I have an ideal audience in my mind. That's what we have to have. The ideal audience, the audience that is the most intelligent, the audience that it has the most taste. I don't even have to be brilliant people, and even necessarily brilliantly educated. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that they can be they can be people who do very common type labor in life, but they may be people who love art, who love great words, who love Shakespeare, not necessarily among the elite, quote unquote. And these are the kind of people, the kind that Hamlet was talking about in his speech, about that one person that we've completely lost track of. You get them, and you'll get everyone else. So the flavor of him going back to what he actually told it starts to come in early on. As he says, I ran it through, how he felt about it as he told her. So not what happened, but what it meant to him when he told it to them. She was listening to a lot of this. Remember, she heard maybe half or two-thirds of this off and on. He was there over a period of many, many nights, over months he was there. We have to ask ourselves, how long has he known her? It's been 9 months since he was last in battle. All indications are that he's been courting her for about 7 months, which means he's been at the house for 7, well, not every night, but maybe 4 times a week, 3 times a week. Okay, start adding that up. 3, 6, 9, you're talking 12, 15 times a month. There's a lot of time. He's been there maybe 100.
None of that.
I think that's it. That's in here. There's no question. He's absorbed that already. But now he's got to get on to other things. And so because he's being jarred by the thing Brabantio said in another kind of way. His esteem. And so now he's got to present his case, not just for them. He's not just presenting this for their sake. It's for his own sake, too. He needs to tell this. He needs to reinforce what he believes or hopes is true, that she does in fact love me. And now I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you what happened. So it's a personal speech. He has a personal stake in this that goes even beyond going to prison. And it will also remove a lot of the ego from the speech. Because the speech, he goes on about these great things that happened, and okay, they're true, and he earned them, but it's a bit much. But it can be a lot nicer and a lot more pleasant and enjoyable, and almost there's a boyish quality here, if he has that, of what it meant to them and what that meant to him, their response. Because remember, it's positive in terms of Brabantio, too. There's an irony here, because Brabantio was hanging on every word, and we can't lose track of that. And for you to go and play both, that will be a problem. That's understood. So you can go back to when things were nice with Brabantio and daughter or whatever. And you'll find, once your ear gets used to it, not indoctrinated, there's a difference, used to it, where you're able to listen to either one. The one you use, whether it's that word or other words, or the thing about the elisions that I mentioned, where you shorten these words. Once you give it a chance, it's like anything, it's habit. Instead of being indoctrinated, you'll have a chance to take in both. You'll know which one is right. And you'll hear, and you'll say, my God, now my ear is tuned. It doesn't work with that. So we narrow the the focus more and more here. And as he does that, he gets more lost in time and place, and he gets more into when you're actually there. Until ultimately, if we were to light this scene, I don't even really light it this way, but I mean, it could almost appear to be that way to our eye. It's like the lights just narrow on him, and it's just, and we just don't see anything else. If we were doing a movie of this or something, we might actually go into the scene that he's talking about. It's a flashback. There's opportunities of flashbacks for the film and a lot of this. And it's so important because it establishes the relationship between the two of them, the whys and the wherefores, in terms of both of them, not just him. We're finding out a lot. You mean animating. So I would say the less the better, Artemis, because in a situation like this, the more demonstrative it is physically, the more it'll be a cell. It could be very real, I mean, but the less said, often less is better. Now I go on and on about more and more, but what I'm saying is more and more and more and more and more and more, and then it's all in here. And then it comes out selectively. But you're filled with it, you know. And it can go 1,000, and here he's filled with all of this. The feeling for her, the awkwardness, the lack of confidence, the love, the joy of what he's going through, the experience, everything else. But it comes out very simply. So that we're not jarred in any way. You know what I'm saying?
This reading of his speech totally took me totally mesmerized. His enjoyment of it, like I could see why I was hanging on his words. I could see why they would hang on his words.
Yes, exactly.
As the senator, that's what was happening to me.
Yeah. So not physical, just very simple, and anything he does do, hands or whatever, it's got to be all of a piece. It's got to be very gentle, very easy, very. He's talking about stress and things that happen, but in a certain context, in a beautiful romantic context. And so, and that can be very interesting what he does with his body, because early on, in contrast to what we'd expect.
Yeah.
Jack Dempsey was brutal in the ring, and it was interesting. His hands were very small. I don't know if you ever saw it. It just makes a strange thing to say, but usually with a fighter, the big, rolling on the hands are like, and he had very gentle-looking hands. Interesting, and he used them that way. Interesting contrast, and it's very charming, very attractive. And here's a guy who, what I'm saying is, you can look for opposites here, not just here, but I mean in the character, in terms of how he shows things physically. Don't think for a moment, because this, oh no, that's nothing, who cares? I mean, I know there are people who are fighters who do that, but so, much more interesting to see the poet in him, or the gentleness in him. We'll see enough of the other. That's the thing, there is the other. And that's where the role is so difficult, because you've got to have all of it. You can have Edwin Booth playing a role, and he did it very well, according to all reports, and he was so gentle, everyone loved him. And they loved him because he was so convincing. I mean, he was an internal actor. He was wonderful. I mean, he was real. But he was by nature, he was very small. Small man, he was about 5'5", because in that day and age, he was shorter anyway. But even by those standards, he wasn't 5'5", 5'4", And he was small, he was very slim, and this and that, and whatever. He did Othello. But Iago was his great role, not Othello, for obvious reasons. But the thing I'm driving at is, as he was very appealing as Othello, because he was very gentle, and he made it real. He didn't try to cop the plea. And then you have Salvini, who was as Othello. He was considered the greatest Othello of all time. And he was like a brute. But he had some of what Booth had. If he didn't, he could never have been great. He could be very gentle and very Italian. And so he was so in love with her, oh my God. And in a speech like this, you can imagine, I wasn't there, but I can just imagine with Salvini, he'd be living this, and oh my God, because then he brutalized her at the end. They said the woman who played with Salvini, her life was in danger on that stage, which, he picked her up, he threw her down, that's his story. Yeah, so we have to learn from all this, we have to learn things to use that are best and where they went wrong, because we all go wrong. In what we have to find where the best went wrong and where they were wrong. We have to get a sense, more than a sense, we have to get a total awareness of what Desdemona
what she saw in that whole thing. So it's not. So it's got to be just the way it happened. She's there. We have to have her in the room here. She comes in momentarily. She's got to be on now. It's like with Lear, that Cordelia has to be on throughout the whole play, even though we never see her. If she's not on, the play has failed. Lear's got to bring her on each time, and he has to bring her on here. And in fact, she's on throughout the whole play with him, just in another way. That's a horror. Because we see her the way she really is, and he doesn't just talk about her. That's not so horrible. That's bad enough. He brings her on with him all the time, with all these dirty pictures and all the things she's doing. And meanwhile, we see her, and it's like, it's horrific. We see the creation, and he makes it real, Othello. It's so real what she is. And then we see the as she is. But now we see her the way. Now, and then there's a turning point. He says, my story being done, she gave me for my pains a world of sighs. So there's more of the amazement of her response to, he already said about her tears, that too. All her responses, we have to see how he responded to her response to the story. Amazing. And it means so much to her. This is a first in his life. No one has ever. And asked, has he ever told this story to anyone before? Well, he told a lot of it to Brabantio, maybe to a couple of other men. Has he ever told it to a woman? Who? So he's showing us a first here on stage. Recreating it first. And his response to it. And then she comes in. Well, let's say she comes in after she loved me for the dangers I had passed. And I loved her, but she did pity. And it could be anywhere in there. He stops, and he looks at her. They exchange. There's a long moment there between the two of them. And then he has the last couple of lines. Right to her. And even he's not next to her, maybe he's 10 feet away or whatever. And then there's a pause, and then the dude. And pauses in Shakespeare are so important. Pauses are important in plays, of course, but in Shakespeare, they're so rarely done. Everything is clipped, and the way the English do it, it's all timing. Timing's wonderful when you need it. But what is timing without breaks, without those moments where they feel the language all the time? We have to fall back on the language. So all we've got is the language. Okay, good. We're going to go on from this. Just one last note now. So, if we were rehearsing this, and you get to an area like it was, especially my story being done, because now we really highlight her response. She gave me for my pains. This is what her ultimate response was. A world of such. Just want to make it was beautiful. It was passing. Or wonderful. It's better. I would restrain you there more and more. Any indication that was to come out of that, I would bring back in. What I'm saying is, it was wonderful. It was passing wonderful. I would draw you back in and say, no, bring those arms in, bring that in, until it's so strong and yet so simple that we're just mesmerized by the Duke. And they're not in the room anymore. And they know they're not. And they're just listening to this big wall. You can't hear a pin drop. Now, obviously, if that's the case, the audience is there. And but anything that goes out, no matter how honest it may be, I'm not talking about honesty now. Anything that goes out can be just a slight bit jarring. So we've got to do just the opposite. Draw us in gently. And the thing that will always guide you in that is her. How she responded. She would not go as passing stranger, no matter how much she felt that. It would be more she'd go inside. She's afraid when she hears this. Her wonder, the beauty of it, the wonder of it is, it's fearful too. Fearful because it's too beautiful. And she's being attracted to it. And that's dangerous, because this is not the way we plan to live her life. No good. But on the other hand, I didn't intend to marry you. I intend to marry somebody who's a little more down to earth. He's going to be off in the wars. And she's terrified of this. But she cannot help what she feels. What is she to do with it? To a great extent, it's Brabantio's fault that she doesn't know what to do with this better. It would be hard for anyone. But perhaps she could handle all this in a better way. Slower way, but that's not. So there's a pause after his speech, Othello's, let her witness it. Thereon, Iago, Desdemona, Cassio, of course Cassio is doing it. And then the Duke has that line, I think, after the pause. I think this will win my daughter too. And then there should be another pause, another break there. Because now he goes to Provencio, which is another thing. But we can't come out of this that fast. It's a very delicate area, and it's that deep, and it reaches us that much. It's just not going to be that easy to break away. And that's the sense that we should get, that the Duke is so taken in by this. That, really, he's not being politic here. He really is. And it doesn't mean that he would agree to have his daughter marry this guy, not for one bloody moment. No, but he can still respect the fact that man tells an incredible story. He spins a wonderful story, and he did it beautifully. And it's like, and it's real. It's real. It's not practical. It's not, too down to earth, but you have to honor. It was beautiful. So there's a moment of respect and reverence there. There's a pause, a line, another pause, and then, and only then, does he have the line for Bravache. Good Bravache. In other words, it's interesting. Desdemona has been summoned. Now we're supposed to hear her talking and present. The Duke is fully prepared now to neglect that and say, let's get on with it. Obviously, he's innocent. Yeah. It's the thing. Now, that's a pretty strong thing. And remember, Desdemona has entered. It's not like she hasn't gotten me yet, although what difference does it make? She's on her way. I mean, he's saying it doesn't matter. Call it off. It's over. And, of course, now, if that's the case, Provencio's panicking here. He's not going to give her a chance to talk. So he has to ask his allowance, his permission, because maybe the Duke doesn't want to hear it. Maybe he said, look, Provencio, it's obvious, isn't it? Now, it is obvious. That's just the problem. That's why I say this speech has to be so convincing. We've got, not by what he says, strictly by the way he says it, and not selling it at all. And that's what's going to get us in. If he sells it all, no matter how pretty or whatever, then he's telling us something. He doesn't tell us anything. He lives it. Okay, now, Provencio's panicking. Wait. So he comes right in with that line. Just a note here, not always. And I'm the biggest iconoclast there is when it comes to Shakespearean plays. I'm always breaking rules. But if you're going to break a rule, you've got to know what you're breaking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're going to paint, first you've got to know how to paint real people the way they really look, and you've got to learn all about the workings of the body, as far as I'm concerned. And then you can paint and become an impressionist or whatever it is. They knew. Van Gogh worked for years on drawing before he ever went to oil, because they know. So be aware. So I'm not giving a rule here, but what I'm saying is with half speeches, like their bare hands is a half a line. Or less. Right. And then there's another half line that picks up after it. You see how it is? I pray you hear me speak. Yeah. Usually, maybe 60% of the time, 70%, the lines come together. It completes this sentence.
It's like present day, that sort of.
Yeah, well, but it ties together. Yeah, it's like all, but this isn't always the rule. Now, here's an area where it is, obviously. Their bare hands, I pray you, hear us speak. Boom, it's right in there. Sometimes you'll have like a line of a couple of words, another line right of it, below it, another line and another one, and you know the author is talking cues here. He's talking, picking up. But you can break that rhythm. There's no rule. I'm just saying there's a clue here to look for. Be aware.